Hi, I'm Reverend Emmanuel, and tomorrow is Easter. In this channel, I like to talk about theology and culture in different ways, and tomorrow being Easter, I wanted to talk about a story by Flannery O'Connor called A Good Man is Hard to Find. So Flannery O'Connor is a Southern writer. She grew up in Georgia, so often she writes books about kind of set within a Southern culture. And her short story called A Good Man is Hard to Find is a beautiful criticism of kind of cultural Christianity in the South. And this short story also has the theme of resurrection in it, which is why I thought it would be interesting to kind of talk about Flannery O'Connor's short story, A Good Man is Hard to Find, within this Easter context, which is happening within this COVID context. So anyways, so this story, the main one of the main characters in the story is a grandmother who kind of is representative of kind of the Southern culture. She's someone who's really nice to people around her, but at the same time, she also has this deep sense of self-righteousness and at times kind of a conniving form of selfishness that is underneath this superficial niceness that she kind of exudes to people around her. And Flannery O'Connor, basically, her criticism is so much of Southern Christianity has taken this form of being nice and being good in front of other people to be a form of Christianity, and in doing that, they've missed the essence of what it means to be Christian. So, how does Flannery O'Connor kind of tease out that theme in this short story, A Good Man is Hard to Find? The story opens with this grandmother reading the newspaper, and she reads about this convict called Misfit, who escaped from prison with some of his con buddies. So she reads this news and she says, "Oh my goodness, the world is going crazy. The world is going nuts. In this world today, a good man is hard to find." She says that, right? So that's where the title of the story comes from. And then the family that she's staying with, which is her son, daughter-in-law, and two grandchildren, they are going on a road trip. So grandmother is going along with them on this road trip. And here there's two things that happen. One, her son does not want her to take her cat with them on the road trip. But of course, this is a nice grandmother who actually is very conniving and selfish at her core, right? So she says, "Oh no, I won't bring my cat with me." But she actually has her cat hidden under her hat on her lap, right? And as they're going on this trip, there is a point at which this grandmother suddenly remembers that if they would take a detour, they could go back and see a plantation that she visited when she was a kid. She really wanted to go visit this plantation. Her son didn't want to do it. So she tells her son, "Hey, there's actually a trap door there, and underneath that trap door there is some silver, so if we could go there, we could get that silver," which is a total lie. She just tells him that lie in order to convince him to take her to this plantation. So on the way to the plantation, the cat that she'd been smuggling under her hat jumps out of the hat and distracts her son, which causes him to kind of swerve, and the car goes into a ditch on the side of the road. A few men come by. Lo and behold, the leader of that gang of men that come is the misfit, the convict who escaped the penitentiary, which the grandmother read about in the newspaper. So here's where all of the plot in this short story and everything that's been happening is leading up to this point of conflict and tension between this grandmother and Misfit, who's this convict, right? So long story short, the convict kills the two kids, kills the daughter-in-law and her son, Bobby, and then the convict comes to kill this grandmother. So this grandmother has to figure out a way to escape from this, and she says she's trying to kind of gather her wits, and she says, Mr. Misfit, deep within yourself, you actually must be a good man. If you just go search in your own heart, you will find that you're a good man. I mean, that doesn't bother the convict at all, right? So then the grandmother realizes, she's going to get killed too. And she starts saying, "Oh Jesus, oh Jesus, oh Jesus." which is kind of this instinctive response to the fear, the emotion of fear that she has. When the convict hears her saying Jesus, then something interesting happens, right? He says, oh, he's the one we all should blame. He's the one that threw everything off balance. And what's that? How did Jesus throw everything off balance? And then the convict goes on to say, so Jesus was the only one that resurrected. Jesus was the only one that raised the dead. The misfit continued, and he shouldn't have done it. He's thrown everything off balance. If he did what he did, what he said he did, then it's nothing for you to do but to throw everything away and follow him. So what he's saying is, if Jesus truly resurrected the dead as he says he did, then you can't do anything else. Your only option is, if someone did that, that person is God, then you kind of have to go follow that person, right? If he didn't do that, and if there is no sense of an ulterior God or ulterior law, then it's nothing for you to do but to enjoy the few minutes you've got left the best way you can. And for misfit, by killing somebody, burning something, burning down his house, or doing some other mean thing to him. There is no pleasure but meanness, right? So what we see in this convict called misfit is that he says something similar to what one of Dostoevsky's characters in the novel Brothers Karamazov says, which is, if there is no God, then all things are permitted. So the idea that he's saying is, if Jesus really kind of raised people from the dead, and if it is true, then I have to leave everything and follow him and make that the ultimate priority of my life. If that's not true, and if there is no sense of afterlife or no sense of God, then I can just do whatever the heck I want, right? So that's what Dostoevsky meant in saying, if there is no God, then all things are permitted. And in some sense, even Paul in 1 Corinthians 15, where he talks about the importance of the resurrected life, says, if there is no resurrection, let's just eat, drink, and be merry. And he's quoting some of the Roman Epicureans in saying that verse. So, and then, so that's kind of the moral dilemma that Flannery O'Connor brings into this. Then the grandmother actually says, maybe he didn't really raise anyone from the dead. She kind of makes this statement, to which the misfit replies, I wasn't there, so I cannot say. I wish I had been there, because if I'd been there, then I would know, and then I wouldn't be like I am now. And at that point, his voice begins to kind of crackle, and the grandmother thinks, oh, maybe he just wants some nurturing around this, so she goes to touch his shoulder to try to kind of almost patronize him, as though he were a little boy. And at that point, he kind of snaps back like a snake and shoots her 3 times in the chest. So with that, the short story kind of comes to an end. But what Flannery O'Connor is really doing here is she's kind of placing this contrast, right? This grandmother who's this nice old lady who's kind of conniving. Her morality is one of conniving selfishness, but she has this veneer of being nice. And then you have this convict who's called the misfit. And the idea is the convict called the misfit has a greater grasp of what does it truly mean to be a Christian. And in a sense, it's to me it reminds me of Nietzsche. Nietzsche was an atheist philosopher living in the late 19th century in Germany. He said there is only one Christian that lived, and he died on the cross. Again, what was he getting at? He was getting at the idea that oftentimes what ends up becoming cultural Christianity is a form of thinned down version of, oh, just be nice to people around you, right? Whereas the true sense of living the Christian life is to give up our own selfishness and place them at God's feet and take up the cross and follow Jesus. When Jesus in in Luke 9:23 says, if anyone wants to come after me, let him take up his cross daily and come after me. So the Christian call is this call to this radical way of life. It's not a call to mere niceness. There is this theologian called Michael Horton. He wrote this book called Christless Christianity, in which he says so much of what passes for Christianity today is what he calls moralistic therapeutic deism. And what he means by that is Christians are just, they have a sense of being moral, of being, oh, I'm better than other people, and therapeutic, which is a sense of feeling good about oneself. And deism is a sense of, oh, God's kind of over there, and he'll kind of do whatever he wants to do, and I'm kind of over here, and I have to do what I have to do to kind of protect what's my own. So it creates a sense of selfishness there, right? So he says a Christianity in which Christ is not at the center becomes this moralistic therapeutic deism, and a Christianity that believes that yes, Christ really died for us on the cross and he resurrected, and he's calling us to that resurrected life, and our hope ultimately is in that resurrected life. That kind of a hopeful Christianity will make it possible for Christians to live Christ-like lives in the present, in the now. In John 13:34-35, Jesus says, on the night in which he washed the feet of his disciples, love each other as I've loved you, then others will know you're my disciples. Right? So this sense of living a life of selflessness, living a life of loving other people as Christ loved us, can only be possible when we truly believe in the hope of the resurrected life. And that's the kind of the ultimate essence of the Christian life. And that's the essence that this grandmother in this story, A Good Man is Hard to Find, completely missed. And it's an essence that Misfit kind of got a glimmer of this is what it could look like, but he just couldn't get himself to a place of truly believing it. So this, in writing the story, Flannery O'Connor really kind of puts the question back to the reader, saying, hey, if you truly believe that Jesus resurrected, then what kind of Christian life are you going to live? Are you going to live a life of just this, oh, I'll be this nice Christian life, or are you really going to live this life of hope of eternal resurrection, the hope of eternal life coming to us through Jesus Christ, and living the present in the form of loving our neighbor around us in a Christ-like way? So that's what I wanted to talk about today within the context of Easter and the hope of resurrection, thinking about Flannery O'Connor's way of looking at Christianity. Anyways, if you like my video, please feel free to like or subscribe to my channel. I'd love to keep doing more videos of this. Happy Easter, the Lord is risen. See you again in another video. Thank you.